calls were initiated to allow us to have a chance to positively talk about human relations in response to all the bad stuff we see in the world, especially around racism. And these have been a free flow conversation. Uh, they generally haven't taken on a theme, but as we've done more of these, we've started to add themes of things that we haven't talked about. And so tonight, we're going to take up the theme of culture and education in terms of race relations. And Dimitri has been a big spokesman on this. So I'm going to ask him just to introduce the topic from that standpoint. So Dimitri, give us your best 3 minutes on it, and we'll go from there.
Nice. Well, good evening, everyone. Sorry for looking the opposite of Anna. I've been sick for a few days, so yeah, I look the part. But I'm happy to be here. Happy to have made it. So just real quick, I'm very honored for the fact that the topic that I mentioned was considered here as we were talking about. We're talking about teaching culture to people that may not know. For example, in sociology, they talk about it consists of beliefs, behaviors, and characteristics common to someone in a particular group. So that what that means is that we every one of us, even sometimes, especially living in the U.S., is a multicultural country that gives us the opportunity to live among many groups of people that have practice many things that we may not be accustomed to, or may look different, or may act different. And so, and I know that this happens especially in the multicultural countries, which these days almost most of the countries have multicultural now. So I believe that in my experience, for example, as I shared it in the past, one of the biggest things for me was going from my country, where even in my country is multicultural. Many people don't know, I'm from Guatemala City, Central America, and it's known as the land of the Maya, of the Mayan people, Mayan indigenous. Many people don't even know that there are over 22 dialects spoken in my little country. So imagine a country that Spanish is the second language. I mean, sorry, is the main language, but it's not the most spoken language. Does that make sense? That they're more indigenous countries actively spoken. And so even from my country's perspective, there are different groups of Mayan indigenous. So even among ourselves, we have differences. And so it's very important. It has been very important for us to understand each other. When I went to the US, obviously I was able to be exposed to many other cultures. And what I've noticed is that the people that had less problems accepting me or interacting with me were the people that had been exposed to something related to who we were. Many have traveled outside the country or had educated themselves, and so therefore the interaction was was natural. Something that I've noticed is that in our society we tend to wait to react to the problem. We don't think about the problem. We don't think about the things that we're facing and why. We just tend to see, oh, we just had this, or oh, we just had that. And so as you can see, like the tension, the racial tensions that we have right now, as you notice, people are reacting, and they're not even reacting in a peaceful manner. They're reacting in a very aggressive manner. Not everyone, but there's enough to talk about that. And so sometimes the aggression comes from reacting to something that hasn't been addressed. But what would happen if we were to look at the problem from the root cause? The root cause, in my opinion, many times happens from the lack of exposure, the lack of understanding, the lack of empathy. And so I believe that education can be a big tool, a big weapon, if you want to call it, against this battle. And so if we all could understand this and we could all do our part, as into always share ourselves, especially from other countries or other cultures or other groups or alternative lifestyles, and to share and be open and be we talked about courage. Have the courage to to share ourselves with the world, and to be willing to educate, to be willing to take that, that sometimes uncomfortable and difficult, and just not the most common thing to do sometimes. But I believe that if we spread this kind of message, I think that people would understand it and be willing to do it before something happened. Kind of like in the jobs too as well. They introduce it into the job as a negative thing, as a forceful thing, as opposed to, hey, this could be a great thing. Let's learn about it. And when I went to Europe, same thing happened. I was exposed to many cultures, many different, I speak 5 languages, and I was able to, practice different languages, and it's a beautiful experience. So when people start to recognize that there are more similarities as opposed to divisions, this is not to, when I talk about educating about cultures, it's not saying, okay, I want to tell you how different I am. No, it's I want to tell you who I am and how similar we are to you as well. Kind of like soccer is the #1 sport in the world. And when it's World Cup, when it comes,
Dimitri, I want to interrupt. Sorry about that, but I'm kind of curious how, or what's your idea in terms of how we begin educating people about the different cultures? Are you suggesting that this starts like in the communities where we live? Is this something that you think should be opened in the school systems, wherever, in the different countries? What's your idea?
Well, my first, the closest one would be we're part of a global platform, and personally, my first video was talking about what I was going to be sharing, and one of the 4 things I mentioned was culture, and I'm going to take it upon myself when I get the chance in the future when things open up. I'm going to start filming things in my country. For example, I'm going to go film indigenous ladies doing tortillas with their hands, and put them in the comal and bringing them out fresh and delicious, you know what I mean? And things like that. I want to go to certain indigenous villages and show the indigenous people how they live and their beautiful clothing and their folklore and everything, So personally, I want to share that in LinkedIn for the world. So it's in more of a massive way. So I'm thinking that as people here in this meeting, there's a lot of influencers. There's a lot of people that are authorities in their field, respected, followed, and understood. And so this is the reason why it's perfect. It's a perfect place to start, because the more we talk about it, because I feel that that's the problem, the lack of. The more we talk about it, the more we're going to be able to do it. And obviously, at home, it starts with our children. It's with our communities, at schools. We can share this message with the school board, with our local leaders, church leaders, just talking about it, because the more we talk about it, the more it expands, the more it spreads around. And so I believe that we have many levels of being able to do it, from home to schools to communities to country to platforms that are now accessible to the world. So I think that's part of what I'm thinking, and that's the reason why I spoke of it, because that's going to be part of my part of what I want to share, because that's the reason why every time I say I'm from Guatemala, I say Guatemala City, Central America. I always say that. Why? Because a lot of times people don't even know where Guatemala is. A lot of times they think it's an island. Sometimes they don't know where I'm from. And ironically, I'm only 1 country away from the U.S. So,
yes.
So it's kind of funny. I might as well laugh about it, but and so that's kind of the reason why I was mentioning, because see, as I mentioned the other day, little things like ethnicity and nationality. Okay, in the US, many times you'll look in the TV and they'll say white, black, and Mexican. And I'm like, seriously? Like, seriously. This is okay, let me give you a quick example. If we were in Africa, they're all Africans. And and because Nigeria is very well known, and somebody from Ghana came, hey, there's a Nigerian. How would that person feel? And that's kind of like the example I'm giving you, because many people are like, I don't understand why you're mad. Well, it's not that I'm mad, it's that I'm not Mexican. There's nothing wrong with Mexicans. I love the food. I love the country. It's a beautiful country, beautiful beaches, everything. But I am not Mexican. As a matter of fact, even with indigenous wise, if you want to know, Mexicans are Aztecs. We are Mayans. And so even in that level, we're not the same. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and even American Indians are not the same. They're like so far and so
Right.
different. They did not. So that would be my answer to that. Tonight, I would hope that we would discuss something of the kind to kind of elevate ourselves to a different place where we can use our knowledge, use our, our influence, our connections, our places in the world, our positions, to make this world a better place. Many people, again, they're reacting too much, too fast, and they're expecting things to change when we know if it hasn't changed for hundreds of years, we're not going to change it in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But if we look at the root cause, in my opinion, has to do a lot with education. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not 100%
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Just want to give others an opportunity to kind of jump in and share their thoughts on what you have just shared with us, because it's a lot and it's definitely worth us exploring a little bit more. So I'm curious to know from the rest of the group who somebody jump in. What do you guys think about what Dimitri is saying in terms of the root cause being lack of education in terms of the different cultures? And you can go down many different rabbit holes in terms of how you're exploring the different cultures that are in and around the communities that you live and work in. So what does the group think about that?
I think it all begins, sorry.
Go ahead, Ariana.
I think it all begins with childhood. Think about it. Little kids play with anybody. They don't have that boundary of race or ethnicity. So they just go and play with anybody. So I think we have to take a lesson from children and start there. We definitely have to do more education in schools to embrace differences. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I also think we have to do more in the workplace too. I know on the last company I worked for, they celebrated different holidays, and Diwali, they brought in food just to introduce culture to the workplace. And I think we have to begin there too, and educate people and be more open at work. So those are my two thought processes.
Excellent. Nicole.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk. I think Kenyatta was first. Kenyatta, did you want to go ahead?
I'll go ahead. I'll go after you.
I think what is it, Arian or Ariane?
Ariane, yes.
Ariane. I think what you were saying in terms of childhood, I absolutely agree with that. I wasn't raised in a very diverse area myself, and so when we had our son, and he's 7 now, we decided right out the gate for kindergarten to put him in a dual immersion program and be around for Spanish. Sorry, so he does Spanish 70% of his time and 30% the other time. But by putting him in this school, he is around over 125 represented countries. And I can't remember how many different languages that people speak there. When this child came home, and by the way, this is public school in a city. This is public school right outside of DC in Alexandria, Virginia. So this is not putting our child in a private school for him to figure out all these things. This is something that was offered in our public school. And he comes home and educates me and talks to me about kids that have very different names, different religions, he'll come home and say, well, they speak Spanish, but they also speak this language. He corrects you if you mispronounce a kid's name. This is not how you say it. This is the accent here. Like, he is very in tune with the respect of others and their culture. And what you were saying in terms of starting, at home and in childhood, I also think even if it's at home, I still think we have to have the choice and the decision to really put them in those environments. You can talk a lot and take them to a few events here and there, but you have to really make sure it's a conscious effort to allow them to be around other cultures, to allow them to see other things than just what they're seeing at home. So I really do believe, my child has learned so much more at 7 years old than I did. And I'm very thankful that we were able to put him in a program where he could just really engulf himself in this and really understand. So when I ask him, if we ever talk about race or, you know, have you ever been teased? Because my son is multicultural. Have you ever been teased? And he's like, no one teases me. He goes to an area with kids that look like him, but also kids that are very different, and they've embraced the differences. So for me, it's been really about starting very, very young.
I think, Nicole, I'm going to speak really quickly what Ariane mentioned, and then what you just said right there with the children. That's so powerful, because you're talking about making a conscious effort to not only teach your children about your own culture, but making a conscious effort to make sure they learn about other cultures. And if we think about that, like how often do people do that with their kids? They make sure they know about their culture, and they almost hold that sacred a lot of times. Like,
Yeah.
you need to make sure you learn about us. Okay, but how much are you spending time making sure that they're learning about other cultures? And so that's a very interesting perspective. And I love, you know, what you're doing there, Ariane. You're right on, because it starts with the kids and take a lesson from them, but then they also take the lessons from us as well. That's when it starts changing. The one thing I was going to add about what Dimitri was talking about, as far as some kind of solution, and I'm just going to speak from something that we're doing with DreamSmart Academy, is we've got a woman that's partners with us. She's a good friend. Her name is Dr. Vanita Kelly. She's an intercultural communication and diversity consultant and trainer. And we actually have a program that she's developed called Cultural Proficiency training seminars that we're going to be doing for organizations, like 2-day seminars around behavior and around cultural proficiency. That's what she calls it. And I'm just looking at this little thing she sent me, and it basically says the objective: deconstruct and neutralize impressions of race, identify and recognize culture, and how culture shock feeds racial ideas and reactions, professional, personal, and leadership development training and exercises, exposing participants to be culturally proficient in the world that it is and that's emerging. And that's just one idea or thought that we're doing it anyway, because we know there's a need for it, and it's beyond the child at that point, because now we're dealing with adults you know, who need the training, right? And it's organizational, so it speaks to what Ariane was speaking about in a workplace. What kind of things can be done? People have asked us for this type of training, and she's going to provide it. And we're putting things together right now because people, they want what Dimitri's speaking of in some regards. Now, is that the end all be all? Probably not, but it's definitely a place to start, and he's on to something for sure with that.
And I think in terms of education too, you know, what Dimitri was talking about, and Kenyatta, you're talking about too, even if we can't go to a place like where Kenyatta, you're offering something, you know, to other people, there's Google. I mean, as you know, it's ridiculous, you know, half the stuff, Dimitri, you just said, I personally didn't know. That's why I love these things. I get a great education on things I didn't know about. But like, I can now go Google, you know, different cultures and have these conversations with my kids and say, this is why they do certain things and whatnot. And even, but you also have to be open to having that conversation too. I think if it's shoved down a throat, kid or otherwise, nobody's going to be receptive. And I live in Staten Island, where I'm Jewish, and I'm very much the minority here, believe it or not. And when my son was bar mitzvahed, a lot of people had no idea what that even meant or what that was. And everybody was asking me, but the cool part about it was everybody was asking me questions and wanting to know what it was, what it entailed. So Dimitri, to your point, the education. So they didn't go in thinking one way or another. So it starts at childhood, yeah, but you also have to be open, no matter what age, to be receiving this information and to wanting to know and to understand and appreciate. Because they may look different than you, but there's a lot more similarities than I think a lot of us even realize.
Edward, go ahead.
So if we want to talk about the root of all of this, it isn't about living in the right area or being exposed to different people. It does start with children, but it's born of two basic things: ignorance and insecurity, fear. These two things need to be overcome. There's plenty of information out there. And if we teach children to just be accepting of everyone and open to learning, that's all we need to say. I'm fortunate where I come from, that whereas the US is considered a cultural melting pot, Canada is considered a cultural mosaic. And I've been fortunate to be exposed to so many different cultures. But as a little boy, I wasn't. And yet, the way I was brought up, and it wasn't like, I don't honestly remember the words that were shared with me because there weren't any, but it was just the loving atmosphere I was brought up in that I learned to accept everybody. And it wasn't based on color or religion. And I had a neighbor who was Jewish, and I was fortunate to be exposed to some differences, but it really comes down to, if we can teach our children to have greater self-esteem and an openness to learn, to overcome ignorance, and really what is most, and it's not just racism against it's people are afraid of anything different. Why are they afraid? It's insecurity. It's insecurity. Help people overcome themselves, and we can adapt to anything. There are many cultures I've yet to be exposed to, but when I meet them, it's easy for me to embrace them. And I've been embraced by many different cultures. And I've been embraced by the right people that have strong self-esteem. But I mean, it can happen within a culture. I mean, where do problems arise between communication? It's usually, well, if we talk about bullying, bullies are typically the weakest in our society. They're the ones with the lowest self-esteem. If we can address, you want to talk about the root cause is helping our children appreciate that uniqueness and who they are is, and I know, listen, I'm on a call with all the right people, and I know who I'm singing to the choir right now, but the reality is we want to talk about root cause. It isn't about the exposure to things. It's an openness to learn. It's understanding that teach our children that who they are is important unto itself. Period.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been having a few of these roundtable discussions. One of the recurring themes that everybody talks about, and I think it's what you're talking about, Edward, is root causes, but it breaks down into education. How we educate, right? The last conversation we had with so many people, and it's the same sort of deal. We get a lot of like-minded people, really great hearts, but each one of them still brought that issue of, hey, it's how we educate the next level, the next generation, what we teach them. Because a lot of the times our own biases are all inherited. We get them from what we see. We get familiar with it and we think it's normal because we see it growing up. I mean, by the time we reach the age of being teenagers and into adults, I mean, we've already had that instilled in our minds. At that point, we really have to go back and you're talking about neuroplasticity, going to have to retrain your whole mind again, your whole mindset on how you got to do. So I think one of the biggest things we talked about was how can we reach that younger generation? How can we reach that next level of teaching them what the difference is, learning and unlearning hate and, unlearning what it is, what seeing people's differences in colors and just because of, as adults, what our own insecurities are and what we teach our kids. Education is such a big factor, and it really touched a nerve inside of myself to say, you know what, I have to go do something about it myself. And really looking at constructive ways to go out and reach that younger generation with what I can do, what are my talents, besides just having a lot of these conversations, because a lot of these conversations are really great. So much I learn so much from each one of these. Every time that I get in one of these things, I learn so much from every single person. But my thing is, if I don't take action on it, if I don't go do something with that information, it might as well just be written on a piece of paper and left into the wind. So for me, that's where I'm headed with the next step of my own self-discovery and education, is how I can go out there and make the difference that I'm always looking for and talking about. And I hope that each one of us takes that to heart and looks at finding ways to do the same thing, to go find that way to go influence and change other people's lives. And I know that I probably won't see the change that I'm hoping for, but hopefully my grandkids will. And that for me is just to plant that seed and get it started, at least at this point, because it is a really huge uphill battle. But at some point, you just got to start fighting it and go, I want to change. I want to change the world. I want to change, and do it until my last breath. And that's where I'm really headed in my own life. So thank you guys for having me, Steve. Thank you for Karen for doing this again.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so let me,
Anthony, hold on a second. I've been watching Anthony's face, kind of like Edward. You guys are the animated individuals of the lot here. And Anthony, your face has just been all over the place, which makes me
There's
think
too many
you
people
have
on the
something.
call.
You have something
I'm
that
the only one who should be here. I
you
don't
want to
know.
share. So Anthony, please do share with us what kind of thoughts are ruminating.
A couple of thoughts here. So what Nicole says about the children embracing the differences, they're not. They're actually embracing the children, right? The other children. And for those of you who are not Spanish speakers, those who are just native English speakers, when you hear the word education, what's the first thing you think of?
School.
yeah.
Learning.
School. Right. In Spanish, you can correct me, the Hispanohablantes. In Spanish, educado basically means well brought up. Means good manners. And culto, what we would call culture, that means so somebody is learned. And so education is a much broader concept than just school. And so like if you had somebody who is ineducado in Spanish, that would be like, we would translate that as uneducated, but what it actually means is they're rude.
Yeah, let me just continue on that, Anthony. Education, in my experience, is better learned through experience, not through necessarily formal education. And an example of that in my own life, at the age of 16, I spent a summer in Honduras. Sorry, Dimitri, I jumped over your country. But I went down there to work in an orphanage as a part of a project. And we had a great time playing with the kids, interacting with them. We did some construction work on the side. But one of the things that I learned is most of the kids in the orphanage were not true orphans. They were children given up by parents who could no longer take care of them. And as I spent the summer there, I often saw these girls come to the orphanage that looked just like me, teenagers my age or so. And I mistakenly thought they were big sisters until I had a conversation with the director, and the director said, Steve, no, those are the mothers. You know, girls down here are fortunate to make it to 14 before getting pregnant. And that some of these 18, 19-year-old girls that might be showing up had 5 kids already. That is a totally different experience and world situation than I ever knew. It opened my eyes to understand that people live differently in different situations, and I need to be aware of that. And if I want to help people, be accepting of that. And so if you've got kids, I would definitely encourage you to get them that cross-cultural experience outside the country, where they're almost immersed in a different culture, because it will come home to them very quickly, like, heck, where's a washing machine? I had to wash my clothes in a creek. It's like you learn very quickly what life is like in a different place.
They look, your shirt looks pretty good anyway, Steve. So.
Thank you.
To your point, Steve, my daughter went to South Africa with her high school a few years ago. And when she came home, she was absolutely stunned by a lot of it. She went to Nelson Mandela's jail cell. They stay in nicer places, yes, but they also did go, because it was from school, so there was education involved. And she was absolutely stunned. And to this day talks about what she saw in a good way. Like, you know what I mean? It taught her exactly what we're talking about, embracing the differences, but appreciating what you have, understanding why things are the way they are in different kinds of places and stuff like that. And it really did stick with her. So it really does work. It really does help. That's very true.
Anna, you look like you were going to say something there.
Yeah, well, I've got kind of two things to say. One, just to your point about culture, in Australia here we have a very similar conversation around Black Lives Matters, but the Black Lives Matters is very tied to Indigenous versus, the white settlers. And one thing that I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So one thing I've noticed that's being done really well here in the schools is a lot of Aboriginal elders or even, cultural experts actually come into the preschools and the schools, and they run programs and they educate. Like they sing Happy Birthday in English and then in Gumbaynggirr language here at preschool. And they're very much, and the sort of theory behind it is that, you look at a history book and it has been written by white Australia. And there's an ongoing conversation here about the Aboriginal culture and how that really needs to come through to a lot of the education here. And it is starting to happen. And I think that's really positive. So it is about schools and that exposure. Because sometimes it isn't as easy for parents to, here we have less, the schools are very, very integrated. There's no sort of separation or anything like that. So, but it's like where I live, there is just a lot of white people. And so I have done my very best to expose, to get to know other families who aren't. Not one, because I'm interested, but two, also, for the sake of my children. But it is good that the schools kind of encourage that education. It's just a totally different side to looking at the land and everything else. And that's been an ongoing thing. The other thing I'll say is, and this is a separate perhaps a separate issue, but my husband is actually from Northern Ireland, and he was born there in the 70s in a very Catholic area, in a very Catholic family. And when I met him 15 years ago and I met his family, I went to Northern Ireland and they were very accepting of me being non-Catholic. But I looked at this family, and there's 8 of them in the family, and there's also their cousins, there's 8 in their family. And between these 16 people, there are probably 7 doctors, 4 PhDs, 2 engineers, optometrists. Like, they are extremely well, what you think of as formally educated. And yet, their parents, had never had any of that opportunity. And I said to my husband, did your parents push you way harder than your aunt and uncle? Did they push the kids way harder than anybody else? And he said, no. He said, what the British made a decision to do in the 70s and 80s was to put so much money into education. And so they've almost educated themselves out of the problems in Northern Ireland, to the point where now my husband looks at what's going on in Ireland at the moment, which is you've got Catholic and Protestants forming joint governments. And he said, I cannot believe I am in my lifetime, having seen what I grew up with in those troubles and that violence, and all of the stuff that went on in Northern Ireland. He said, I can't believe that they are now having these really integrated talks and conversations, and that may well turn into a lot more than even just what we're seeing now. And I think that's a really interesting example of, because I was just stunned at the acceptance there, having heard growing up in Australia so much about how badly integrated they were when I was at school here. Yet by the time I'm in my 30s and now, the integration is unbelievable, to the point where, the troubles aren't gone, but they are widely not an issue in Northern Ireland anymore. And it has been really about education, not just the formal education that was invested, but also I think the families kind of making that decision, at least in my husband's case, to make it very, very open and accepting and very liberal views.
Let me ask you, Anna, or the rest of the Down Under crowd, because I heard you say Aborigines and white, but don't you also have a sizable population from Vietnam or Southeast Asia? So you've got multicultural in your...
We've got a lot of, certainly where I live, there's a number of Sudanese refugees as well. There's quite a large sort of population there. So, I think, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 50% of Australians are born overseas.
Yeah, I don't think it's that high, but certainly
It's
those
high.
who would be, it would be. Certainly in a place like Sydney, where I am, we've got a lot of Chinese, Vietnamese. We opened up our borders in 1975 at the fall of Saigon, and a lot of Vietnamese came out, we have a lot of Indians as well. That would be especially in Sydney and Melbourne. I would think that those larger numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have a very multicultural society. I still don't think our views are. There's still a lot of. There was I think it was the 50s. I think the government here had this white Australia policy. It's
white
awful.
Australia policy.
I'm actually ashamed to even say this, but there was a government policy about white Australia policy to allow whites from primarily England to come and settle in Australia. And like that was an actual government policy. And so obviously they've gotten rid of that. But I think there is still a little bit of that mentality, particularly in the older generation. And we do have a lot of, we have quite an aging population. We don't have a very young population at all. And there is a lot of very, very white views within even politics now.
So Joy, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this topic, and maybe you could share with the rest of us kind of how culture and education, what does that look like where you are?
Thank you, Karen. I think I'm going to start this by asking, or actually, let me start this by echoing Edward. You want to talk to people, educate them on culture. The first thing is tackle their ignorance and tackle their fear, because everything, especially today, especially after COVID scenario, this uncertainty that everyone uses. I'm a prolific addict on LinkedIn. So let me paraphrase by saying that. Why? Because on LinkedIn, everything I hear is this: I'm afraid, everything's uncertain, everything's gone belly up, the world's crashing, my neighbor hates me, I can't do business. And I wake up, I look at the sun, I look at my kids, and I'm like, I'm amazed, because my business, God bless me, has never been so better, courtesy COVID. What the point I'm making is this: each one of us as a human being, we connect when somebody is talking to us on something that's interesting to us, which means that ignorance factor is, I want to know/learn, right? If you're open, then you're receptive. Now, having said that, I'm going to ask the group a question. All of you are seeing my name. Please tell me, who am I in terms of ethnicity? Steve, please keep quiet. Go ahead, just throw a guess.
I'm going to
Take
be
my
honest and
accent.
say I really don't even know. So I'm
Yeah,
not
go
even
ahead.
venturing
Take my
a guess
name,
'cause
take my
I
face.
honestly have no idea.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'm a human being. No,
Doesn't matter.
exactly, that's the point. You see, that's the
Okay.
point. So let me fill this in. I'm a
I
British
feel.
national, a third generation British national of Indian origin. And in my immediate family, I have a mini UN. I have 3 legal nationalities. My elder 2 kids who are in Germany are Indian. I'm British. My wife and my younger 2 kids are Malaysian. Culture, acceptance of diversity, if I may use that word, starts with oneself. So when I go out, what's the work I do? I basically create marketing magic for my mid-size business clients. The first thing I talk with business owners is, tell me what do you want to do beyond making money? You know, every businessman that I talk to in this part of Asia, I work across partly out of Sydney, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand. My co-partner in my firm is based in Sydney. These 5 areas, every single business owner says they've got a dollar sign, 7-digit, 8-digit. I said, just humor me and tell me the next stage. And then this whole bit about race comes in, because I say, can I have your employees sit with you and talk to discover something? So when you take care of that ignorance and you address that, hey, Edward and I are actually same. For the love of God, it doesn't matter if he looks a little more white than I am. It's probably I've been out in the sun too much. But actually, if you look at what he's thinking and saying, what am I thinking and saying, do they gel with you? Do they give you something of value? Either it's knowledge, it's a benefit, a gain. Then why don't you take it together, put them together in a team and go out? Point I'm making, and Dimitri would know this, we interact quite often. We have cloistered ourselves in our own little bubbles, whether it's in our home, neighborhood, community, and town. So yes, absolutely in agreement. Let the kids get exposed. And Steve gave a brilliant example. You have to go out. You have to get out of your own territory. So I, for example, have lived in 4 countries, and I'm pretty close to Steve in terms of age. I've lived in 4 countries, 17 cities. This, where I'm sitting and talking, is my 18th, and I hope to God, my final home. I am sick and tired of changing homes, right? So when you live out of your comfort zone, you go to different places. Anna, you mentioned this. Steve mentioned his story in Honduras. You get to adapt. And we human beings are, you know, when we push ourselves, we automatically adapt. It's inside us. But if you don't push yourself, if you're ignorant about it, you keep doing the same routine 7 days a week, you're going to get exactly not the same results.
Okay, good night.
You're going to get a declining result. So in sum, get out there, talk to people. I mean, Dimitri and I met online and we just clicked. We spoke. He joins on the podcast we have on my end and really energizes people. And I think what he's saying in sum is, can we share ourselves and our perspective out there? So I'm not going to talk education and kids. I'm not qualified for that. But if we talk our perspective and we share our views, just like this group has formed, you attract similar-minded people. When you attract, you create a force, you create a body. Now, what can we do with that? Up to the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.
Selma, I know you have something to share, especially with you having now living in Canada.
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the essence of the problem. I think that it all starts at home with the family, how they reflect on what the kids see, whether it being what they bring from the school, if they are older, if they are school age, whether if what they see on TV, the stories that they read, everything that they interact with. If the family reflects correctly on these things and give them the right direction, I believe that a lot of issues would be, cut short from the beginning. So, for example, if if the sarcasm at home or the judgment at home, seeing the different races, the different backgrounds, the different standards of living is eliminated, then we would be off to a better start with this, you know, child that deals with everyone and accepts everything, because this is the human nature. Then moving to school, and as Nicole said, this would be a very important thing to be encountered with the different backgrounds and nationalities or I don't know, upbringings, but it's not usually the case with all of the children. So where I'm coming from Egypt, it's not the case. The difference would be only the standard of living and the religion. Only that's it, I think, that I've been facing. And I will not see people from different nationalities. I wouldn't have people from children in the same class that are so different than me. But still, the bullying happens, the sarcasm happens, and the differences happen. And it's the role of the school as well as the home and the family to direct the children in the right way and to eliminate these things. Then moving to the workplace, and as we talked, I believe, earlier during the racism discussion, the workplace as well has a lot of things. If people accept each other in terms of different, you know, age difference and even experience difference, the newcomers in a job would be, people would be biased against them, for example, because they are newcomers and they don't have enough experience and so on. So it's a cumulative thing that all starts, I believe, from home. And what we're doing now and what we're trying to diffuse from our energy is something that I believe will, as Gabriel said, will improve the generations to come. I hope that it would be earlier than the grandchildren of Gabriel. I hope it would be, you know, somewhere between our kids or so. But I understand that the dialogue and the elimination of judgment, the respect of the differences and so on will play a very important role in this. Moving as well to Edward's point regarding the insecurities, the self-esteem and so on, these are spot on, because all the people that pinpoint the differences and see the differences that much and act upon them, I don't think that they have that much of self-confidence to embrace everyone around them and to act in the right way. So I hope for the best.
Excellent. Now, Paula and Megan, you two have been very quiet. You've been patiently just
soaking it all up. Soaking it all up.
So we'd love to hear your thoughts.
I was listening intently, particularly obviously to Anna and Anthony, being a fellow Aussie. I think the thing that really jumps out to me is this gulf when you are dealing with the structured education system here. And my son's 12. There is a great focus there on multiculturalism within the school. And I feel as though it almost the school needs to engage more closely with the parents before they roll things out in the school. Because it happens in reverse, certainly from what I've seen. The kids bring it home, and if the parents aren't receptive, it often grinds to a halt. Mm-hmm. Or people are given too many options, you know, and I'm at the risk of sounding cynical. There's a lot of, you know, kind of political correctness when it comes to let's not stir the pot with the parents too much, because we've got to maintain good relationships there. But let's get them on side, and if they're not on side, they're given permission to not have their children involved in things, you know. So it's I feel like there's got to be a stronger dialogue with the parents before anything happens in the schools, in order for that to continue to be a two-way thing. And I live in a very white location as well, but we do have a growing, certainly where I work is a massively growing Asian population, to the point where if you are white, you are almost in the minority. That's how much it's grown in the last 10 years.
Can I ask where you are?
In Melbourne.
You're in
Box
Melbourne,
Hill
are you?
is where Box Hill
You're in Box Hill, yeah. Okay.
yeah, which is an absolute epicenter for Asian culture. It used to just be dining. Now it's everything. It's commerce, it's schools, etc. So it's part of the course, but it is still quite segmented. You know, as much as we pride ourselves on being another very multicultural and melting pot community, there's still segregation, and there's still, well, I'm more comfortable being in that suburb because, you know, a couple in Melbourne, particularly Box Hill and Springvale, very heavily Vietnamese, very heavily Cantonese and Mandarin. They gravitate there, and then the white people don't want to go in. So it's kind of, and then my son goes to school in Box Hill in one of those areas. It's a Catholic school, largely white, in the middle of a heavily Asian community. So I just, again, the whole talking to the parents and helping them to break down their own fears and their own biases enough to create space for the kids when they bring things home, you know, is just the little piece that to me feels a bit tenuous, even though there are so many amazing things going on at the moment.
Yeah, that is a very interesting dichotomy where the children are, you know, definitely open to other children that are different, and yet when they come home, their parents, maybe with their own biases, kind of put a halt, maybe even cause them to develop walls and change something that they, you know, innocently just appreciated, but now they go back and they look at it differently with, dare I say, a bit of a tainted view. And that's really a shame that that happens. And I know that it's not, it happens a lot here in the States, which is unfortunate, you know, and we're definitely going to have to do something to work harder at helping adults kind of embrace a little bit of that childlike quality when they're meeting new people and they're going into different environments. Now, Paula, I think I understand this correctly, that you live down the street from Selma and Edward. And I think the three of you get together at times. So it's three Canadians here on the call. Maybe you could share a little bit your thoughts on this topic.
It's all coming down to, I look at the innocence of children and how pure we are when we're born. We don't see differences. We just assume we're all the same. And that socialization takes place with the parents. We all don't have the whole sense of family in the same sense. Everybody has a different, like now, if you look at it, our children are being raised, 50% of those families are split. So what that parent is going through is going to affect how they raise their children. And if it comes down to it, I'm here in Canada. I'm very fortunate that when I was raised, my parents landed and had a baby. They're immigrants. So here I am on a street with a whole bunch of different nations. I didn't even know there was a difference. I played with all cultures and was exposed to everything. And so to me, it didn't make a difference I just wanted to know if you were a nice person and play. So I think the parents that are landing, we have this sense of, and what Joy was saying, we gravitate to what's familiar or what is attractive. And I think about all the people on the planet, you know, almost 7 billion people, but there's only a limited bank of emotions. And those emotions are the things that connect us to one another. If you do something that makes me feel good and safe, I want to be near you. And what we are attracted to, that's what we're going to gravitate to. But the parental part of it, the whole nature experience is the biggest educator, and that's going to affect you even when you go to school. Your economic status, your social, your marital relationship, your religion, everything that you are being told before you enter the education system, who's letting you know that you are of value from day one and that you matter and it's okay to ask questions and you have to have an open mind. If you're brought up in this situation within those first 5 years of socialization, it's pretty hard to change anything after the fact. But if you are nurtured in a way that it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to look at the diversification and respect it too. It's the whole purity that we're born with, we seem to veer away from, and then later in our life, we want to come back to and just feel that essence again. But the open mind is necessary. If you don't have that open mind, you're just closed. You're closing that door and you've already created a bias right there. And sometimes you don't even know it's there until something happens that causes pain.
Yeah, Paul, I want to add to what you brought up, because I've heard it emphasized again and again. Parents, and yeah, parents are the primary nurturing, teaching, training individuals in children's lives, but they're not the only ones. You've got grandparents, you've got the community around you, you've got other people potentially bringing in their views that may affect your children, and you don't realize that unless your child comes home and asks you, and then maybe you have the opportunity to counter that in some way.
Well, I wrote home in November or something, I published it, but I grew up thinking I was Italian for the first 5 years of my life. I'm not Italian. My parents are from England, Ireland, Scotland, all the British background, monarchy, whatever. But I was surrounded by the majority of Italians. I lived in other people's basements. I ate all their food. I learned their language. Mine was predominantly Italian. One day I said to my mother, how much is in my bank account? She goes, where'd you get even though everybody talked differently, she's like, where'd you get this idea? I said, well, my friend Mima, she has money in the bank. And I go, well, how much do I have in the banks? Thinking I had the same. And she's like, they're Italian. And I go, yeah, so how much do I have in the bank account? She goes, oh no, we don't have bank accounts. We're from England. I'm like, what? I go, where? I go, and like telling me I'm Italian, and I go, I'm not Italian? They're not British? Like, I thought we were all the same. And that was the first day I was aware of the fact that there were differences, and I didn't like it. I didn't like being told I was different from my friends. But that made me aware that, oh my God, so she has a bank account and I don't. That even didn't matter anymore. It was the fact that my whole world changed at that instant. I'm not Italian? What? What am I? But it's a very cultural mosaic here. We are, like, you think about it too, like these people are landing because they were trying to increase the population over here in North America, in Canada. They're like in their 20s. They're just kids having babies, landing in another country. And they will gravitate to what's different. But the same thing, I saw all these different cultures. They were all here trying to make a better life for themselves. And that was the connection that just made it just so united. There wasn't any fights on my street. We got together and did acrobatics on the lawn. We had our own Olympics every night. So, but it was just amazing to see that exposure growing up. But then when you see later in life, people are fighting about it. It's like, why are you doing this?
Joy.
You know? Like, that's.
I just wanted to echo what Steve said, that the point is very important. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that over and above the parents, for a child, the child exists in that society of grandparents and neighbors and community. So how do you influence this grandparents, neighbors, and all? I mean, if you've had grandparents like I've had, and I was about 11 or 12 when I lost my paternal grandparents, you don't get to speak a word. So in today's day and age, if we can be what we believe is our true, real self, if we believe that we love cultural diversity, if we believe we are all human beings, if we forget for a moment Joy is Muslim and Nicole is X and Y and Z, just forget Joy is Joy and Nicole is Nicole and Steve is Steve, and we are all, you know, I try and recalling one of Paulo's poems, but it slips me. The point here is lead yourself in a way that makes you feel very good. So if you lead yourself, you would reflect that as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a brother, in every aspect of your life. When you start doing that, people start sitting up and saying, what's going on here? So their biases start getting hit. You have a civilized conversation and you walk away when there's disagreement. But when you walk away, in your role as a brother, father, mother, wife, husband, whatever it is, you decide to take an action. That action is for the betterment of the immediate people. All of us would have a handful of people, 5, 8, 10 people that are really important to our lives, for whom we would lay down our lives. If we say we're going to lay it down for 7.5 billion, I'm sorry, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not. I'm going to lay down for probably about 7 people in my immediate inner family circle, right? If we can impact those people, let's now imagine, as we say in marketing, every person talks to 3 other people. Can you see the ripple effect? And I don't think we're going to wait for, you know, grandkids to deliver it. If I do it with my kids, in 10 to 15 years, you're going to see that. Yeah, I'm going to be a geriatric by that point in time, but you can see that change. That's the hope. And that's all that we can do with it. That's all we can do. I mean, this is how Steve and I connected. I loved his story. His entire survival and self-development story attracted me to Steve. We got talking. We got speaking. Steve came on our show. And here I am today after, what's it been, Steve, 2 years?
Probably a year and a half.
Year and a half. So you see how it connects. That's all I'd like to bring to it. And we create biases. Paula's absolutely right. After the age of 5 or 6, children don't know right, wrong, good, bad. They imitate, they literally imitate what they're seeing out there in front. So when we get angry, when we get, you know, really pissed off at the end of the day and says, damn, I'm tired and you're wanting attention, they're just simply replaying what they've seen. So if you bring that bit of mind to that present to say, hey, they must have seen this from me somewhere. Let me stop. Let me take 15 minutes, give it to them. Boom, issue over. I mean, my third boy is 10. The conversations I have with him, I haven't had with my eldest, who's now turning 24. Seriously, this is the generational divide, the gap, if we want to call it. The conversations I have with my 10-year-old about, and he's in a multicultural environment. And coming to Salma's point, I live in Malaysia. Malaysia has got 3 broad races. And the beauty is there's more polarization here. I've been living here for 20 years. My wife is Malaysian. I've got more polarization between races who bring up to say, don't mix with so-and-so. They're different. We believe different. We live different. We eat different. What are you doing? You're creating a generation of segregated tracks. So you can send them to school. But when it comes out of the school, where's that continuity? So the point here is that we ourselves, if we want to just take each other, A, as a human being, forget everything else. B, just that goodwill or gesture to say, hey, you're created, you're a human, I'm a human. I want to make sure I don't hurt you. If I can't help you, I don't want to hurt you, period. I might be very altruistic here. I might be very altruistic and probably reaching an age point where that matters more to me than the next $1 million in the bank. But so far it's paid for me. So far it's paid for me. That's what I do with my clients. I connect with them. People ask me, what do you do marketing differently? I said, simply be yourself, be transparent, be truthful. Tell your customer, my product quality is good, but I do have an occasional breakdown. Tell your employee, I'm really sorry, we have a cash crunch, but can we work this together? We'll get the money back in 3 weeks. I'm going to be delayed a week. If you be honest at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 people are going to reach out and say, let me help you. But if you try and pull wool over somebody's eyes and put on all these masks and, you know, pretend you're superior to the next man or woman, and you're only defying yourself, you know, you're lying to yourself when you look in the mirror. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. That was an excellent summary to potentially close out this session. We didn't have a whole lot of humor this session, so I'm going to pick on a couple people.
It's a very heavy topic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Megan, I am disappointed. You are the lady in red, show up in purple. And
you got to have a secondary color palette, you know.
And Kenyatta, you're always cracking up, and you have not made one joke or laugh.
Hey, you know, I was listening very intently because everything you guys are saying literally to me is research on certain things like the charter school we're building, what I do with behavioral superpowers. Listening to everything you guys say, I'm like, yep, I'm on the right track. I know I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know that what I'm doing will change the world. Exactly what you're saying. But let me show you something I learned today on a call. When someone's on a roll, when you're on a Zoom call, everybody go like this. On a roll. How come I'm the only one doing it? Yeah. Woo! Or when someone says something and you're like, mind is blown, just sit there and just be like, whoa.
Love it.
The small things. I was on a call today with about 50 teachers and administrators and school principals and superintendents, and they were teaching each other how to be more effective teaching their students, whether they be young kids or older kids, and certain things that they were doing. I'm like, brilliant. I said, these apply not just in the classroom, but any Zoom room, you know? So it's to get people more excited and move around and get the blood flowing. So that's what I got for you.
No.
Okay, good.
I second that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Anthony, like Joy said, I don't think I die for you, but I'll sure take a magpie for you if you get attacked again.
Yeah, I did. I was, so what was behind that was I started recording a little video for LinkedIn, and it was about some boring topic, and to do with pricing. And as I was doing it, I was out in the bushland, and I heard a magpie, okay, a bird just above me, and I looked up, and then it came down and it swooped me, so I ran, and it was actually, the video was about people don't want to be sold to, right? And I ran, and it swooped me again. It swooped me 3 times. Okay, I'm going to spoiler alert here. I survived, and and anyway, I got through. I got away, and then I finished off the video just saying, well, like, that magpie didn't want to be sold to. But I kept the camera on the whole time as I was running up the hill and puffing, and yeah, and so someone said, like, what a pro.
If you have not seen that video, you should go find it, because to me, it's probably one of the funniest videos I've seen posted on LinkedIn.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, you'll be
Here
pleased
am I,
to know.
practically in ICU, and here
Steve, it will be magpie season again in about a month's time in Australia, so we might get a repeat.
One of these days, I want to come down and visit you guys for sure. So, thank you all for coming. We've hit our hour, so feel free to drop off. But we also extend the time a little bit to let people who might want to continue to talk to have that opportunity. So, if you need to move on to something else, especially those of you in Australia, you're starting your day. The rest of us are probably ready to go to bed. But anyway,
it's just after midday here on Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Thank you, everyone. I've
been
got to
fantastic,
jump off.
Steve. Thank you. Yes, me too.
You. Stephen, thanks.
That's
Karen.
awesome.
Bye. Dimitri,
Thank
brother,
you.
take care. Gabriel.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Steve and Karen, thank you for this. And it's just been a real pleasure to get to know some new people through these calls, and I look forward to future calls.
Yeah.
I'm glad you tagged me, Steve. Thank you.
Edward, me and you have been connected for a long time. So this is a pleasure to actually say hello to you, quote unquote, in the flesh.
I saw your message come up.
You haven't had him on your show yet, Gabriel?
We've talked about it. I have not had him on the show just yet, but that will be taken care of. Believe me, I have a list of people that I'm knocking off, and even Miss Turner down there as one of the people that I sooner or later will knock off. Karen, I haven't had Karen on, and I've seen Karen. I don't know what it is. Right now we're running in a lot of the same circles. So I love that.
Oh, me, Karen?
Yes, you, Karen.
Both like which one?
I've already had the other Karen on the show. So by process of elimination here.
Oh, okay.
I should have said.
Yeah.
That's and of course I've connected with so many people on here. Paula, of course you as well. I've had so many different interactions with all of you. And I'm gonna tell you what, it's been a blessing to get to know so many wonderful people through the power of networking and doing this, because again, to me, it has been the most singular thing that I've enjoyed about this journey is getting to know that there's so many people like myself in the world who want to make change. And sometimes it warms the soul, like I like to say, it warms my soul that I know that there's other people like that in this world. And like I say, I am an optimist. I do pray for a lot of good things. I do want stuff to change. But I know, again, I just tell everybody this, by the time my grandkids are old enough, they see the change that I've always envisioned in my own mind of what this world could actually be. So
I got to be honest with you, Gabriel. I think it's going to be sooner than that. I really do. I really think that, I mean, my daughter is almost 19, and the conversations she has with my husband, they are amazing conversations because they have differing views, but they're really smart and they bring up really great points, and then they walk away like I think Steve, you were saying they walk away from each other and that's it, or as Joy was saying that. So I think the teenagers are starting to make the difference. So I think that change is actually going to happen before our grandkids are going to definitely be part of it, but our children are definitely going to start the change, and maybe the grandkids are going to continue it.
I have to agree. My daughter's 20, and with everything that's happening around her, she impresses me with her outlook on how things are for her. And my children are multicultural, so they've had some visual impact on their lives too. when people I didn't even know or was not aware of how things made her feel at times. And this came out recently, and it just blew me away, because before it was just like, I taught my children, nobody's better than anybody else. If I couldn't afford to take them to another country, we were reading about it. So there was a lot of books that were available too. Grandparents, I didn't have. So they were able to visit the different families and see the cultures too. But I think they are getting it more than we are giving them credit for, because what came out of her just totally impressed me. I was actually very proud of her. And I mean, there's things that they still have to grow up about.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't know what a mortgage is, but as for cultural diversification, she's all aboard. And I think they are getting it sooner than what we're giving them credit for. So it is hope to always want better for the next generation, right? Or we hope to anyway. Yeah.
I want to add something to that real quick, because Gabriel, I see where you're coming from and why you say that, and I'm going to agree with you on this point. And Paula and Karen, you guys are absolutely right. The people who are the millennial ages, teens, things like that, they are seeing things in a different way. But generationally, I kind of feel like
it's the next one that's going to do it.
Well, yeah, and here's why. I think that and this is going to sound morbid, but whatever, I'm just going to say it because I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that more of the people who are alive right now, who remember times,
I see,
need to die and stop perpetuating the thing that is happening.
Bye,
and I don't mean that.
That's actually a fair point, though. Like, I actually see your point more, but I actually see that.
I know you guys know what I mean. Like when I say that, right? Because we've been talking about where these ideals come from, and they don't come from the 19-year-old. You know, they come from their parents or their parents' parents or their parents' parents who might still be alive, who remember things differently, who sit them on their laps as children and say, let me teach you the ways of the world. Let me teach you my value system. Let me teach you, you know, what I remember as a kid. Let me teach you, you know, either there's people alive right now who their parents and parents' parents and well, maybe parents' had plantations. Just like there's people still alive who were slaves or their grandparents were slaves on those plantations. They still remember. So they're telling stories and perpetuating some of the things that we're all talking about. How do we disperse this? But there's still too many people
That's fair.
alive. So we need a few generations like where they see things.
The idea has to die off.
Yeah, it does.
You know,
you can't change people. They say you can't change your parents. You have to accept them for who they are.
Yeah.
And half the time we're there. We're not liking what they're saying. We think they're just opinionated, closed-minded. We can't change them, but their ideals will go with them.
Right. And I always equate it to like somebody who plants a redwood tree. They'll never see it mature. They'll never see its beauty and majestic, but they know that they planted the seed there. And that to me is what is important. I know what society I live in now, and I know what I have to deal with, and I know that I can at least start the changes. And that's for me is the hope going forward, is to change not my perception of it, but what my grandkids will see in this life.
Right.
And what they'll see, and they'll go, what a wonderful world I live in.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it has to start somewhere, and it has to start. And I am grateful for the generations before who've done what they've done for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing I got to do forward, going for the next generation, the generation after that.
Absolutely.
That's why I said
bigger than us.
Bigger. This message, what we're talking about, goes on a whole nother level, 100-year level where things will be changed. Not for me. In the century, these conversations, they might happen, but not to the level what we have to talk about. It'll be something different because what we did with each individual person here who believes and go out there and wants to really impact somebody's lives. I mean, that's why I'm learning about changing kids at the earliest levels, because man, that's where the magic is. Have you ever seen a kid play with an imaginary friend? We as adults will tell that kid, you're nuts for doing that, for believing that. When in their eyes, that's reality. That's the level they see on. They see on a whole other. We need to take their perspective and put it in our lives, and not the other way around. That's the problem with a lot of things that we do. We see that. They see the magic. They see the beauty in life. They see whole other things that we don't see.
And that's the power I'm gonna have to just add there in Think and Grow Rich. That's what Napoleon Hill's talking about. He's talking about that who's leaving? Bye, Nicole.
Hi guys. Nice to see you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Love the conversation, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. You know, he's talking about that sixth sense, and he's talking about imagination. He's talking about desire, and every time I read it, because I read this book like every 12 weeks, you know, I think about what you just said, children. And how, you know, they have their imaginary boardroom around them. They have that. And at some point, some adult says to them, hey, you can't have your imaginary friend anymore. And the kid's like, why? You know? And then we grow up and we get all jaded. And then we got to read books like Think and Grow Rich so we can go back to imagining again and having vision and not thinking anything can stop us. But we have to be reminded, because again, it's the adults that start shutting us down. And then our jerk friends, because our friends are jerks too. So our young friends are like, you know, they got parents who are teaching them, going, my dad said this. You know,
social media doesn't help either. I mean,
no,
none of it helps. So we all have to go back and start over.
A kid can see A kid can see happiness as the color blue. And what I mean by that is picking up a crayon color blue and it makes them happy to their heart. Simplest things. Yet we look for deep meaning in so many different things. That's why I said, I want their thought process, and not the way that society is cultured mine. And that's something that I again has been literally on my mind every single day on how to change it. Oh yeah, I'm sorry if I'm talking about the kid. What it is I got my camera here, guys, and I usually have a monitor in front of me where I have it turned on. But after I cut my show off, I usually cut the monitor off. So instead of me talking straight into the camera, I'm talking to my laptop. So
I was wondering who you were talking to.
Yeah, it's his imaginary friend.
It's my imaginary friend, guys.
Good
Yeah,
imagination.
So
We gotta get out of here, y'all.
Yeah.
Have a great night, everybody.
So just so y'all
Great
can
to
see,
see
look at all my
Bye,
set. I got so many.
Kenyatta.
I got so many
Kenyatta.
monitors.
Bye.
I got so many monitors and cameras and stuff in here. So usually I have all that powered on while I'm doing my show, but after I cut it off, I usually turn it off because it processes so much heat. And I usually do talk straight into the camera and going, "Hey, how you doing, guys?" But not tonight. I'm looking off into my laptop on the other side. So I apologize, folks.
You do that on your show too, buddy.
I know. I do that sometimes.
No, I'm calling you out again.
Hey, I'm learning something here. Okay, so that's what I see it as. It's always a learning process. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, Steve. Guys, anytime you want to invite me to one of these things, I love what I learned from each one of these sessions.
And we
Great to have
love
you.
what you share. You know, you also always bring such great insight to each of the conversations. So anytime you're able to jump on these calls with us, Gabriel, we are honored to have you here.
Awesome. And I got to shout out to Dimitri. I've been reading a lot of his stuff, a lot of back posts and stuff that he's written. Bro, you're really in depth, man. I get well, here's the problem. I get super hyper focused on some folks sometimes when I go back. So whenever I first when I heard Karen talking about you on the show, I said, let me check out Dimitri. Go start playing. I go back and start reading these articles and start reading things that you write, posts that you put out there. And I go, wow, pretty interesting thought process he has. So I see why she holds you in such high esteem.
Thank you.
You know, that's just literally, and that's why I say I learn from everybody. So I'm on the thought process. I am no better than the next man, next woman sitting next to me, as much as whatever wisdom and knowledge that they want to share with me. So I love it. Anytime anybody wants to share with me, I'm a sponge.
Well, this conversation is good in terms of giving us that opportunity to learn. You know, there's opportunity to share if we want to share, or just sit and listen and absorb information, kind of like Kenyatta said. You know, hey, in her mind, she's thinking through something she's building. How is this helping her build that? And in some sense, Karen and I are doing the same thing.
Yes.
Every time Dimitri speaks, I'm like, literally every time when he brings up, it's like a whole new education for me of things I didn't know that now I want to, but now I'm interested in, now I want to go investigate further because I didn't know I had lived, and that's the sad truth. I didn't know any part of what you were saying in the beginning.
Did you go and look up Ada Lovelace?
All right, hold on, I'm writing that down. I'll never remember.
That's who he was talking about, right? Ada Lovelace is known to be the first woman to actually.
Oh, yes, it wasn't even. Yes, that's one of the things that I mentioned. And if you want to know the computer side too, yeah, even a woman's the one that invented a computer as well. If you want to look into that.
Right,
So,
you
yeah,
said that one of the times you wanted was a computer programmer.
Well, yeah, but there was a woman that invented programming as the code, and there was a woman that invented the hardware machine. So it's like women have, thanks to women, we have what we have today, you know? And we were talking about how, you know, how as human beings we lose our, you know, our individuality, or even like because they force us. It's like I was going to write a post on this because I really thought it was very interesting. That have you noticed how we are more influenced to fit in than to stand out?
Yep.
And it seems like it's like it's supposed to be the other way around. We should be investing in how different we are and sharing that with the world. And that's something that like blew my mind when I understood it, you know, because we are more influenced to fit in than standing out. And we should be focusing on standing out because we're all individuals, even when we're part of a group, even when we're part of a nationality. And then another aspect of it is, you know, because of my field and technology, let me tell you the difference between machines and human beings. The difference, the only thing the machines can't do better than us yet, there are two things. They are empathy and creativity. Two things that machines have not done yet. And those are two things that as adults is what we lose. Have you noticed that? Because we are forced to fit in, we're supposed to behave, we're supposed to be normal. You know, the reason why I am the way I am is because I refuse to be incarcerated. Yeah. I refuse to be like someone else. I refuse to be stereotyped. And that's part of it. You know, it's not, stereotypes are not necessarily racist or you know, or had to do with something. No, to me, a stereotype is just fitting me somewhere that I belong to a pattern. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, no.
That's probably why I'm so drawn to you.
Yeah.
You have not lost your creativity. So thank you.
Yeah, man, conformity is something I do not agree with at all. And I'm like you. That's why I said I found you fascinating when I started digging more into what you're talking about. Because again, it's the same things that I believe. So, man, you see, guys, I put my creativity. I do what I do differently from anybody else. Mm-hmm. Nobody does what I do. And nobody will be able to replicate what I do because I'm me. Nobody else will be able to do that. Right?
You're unique, buddy.
Yeah. Nobody does shows where say, hey, you know what? If I wanted to right now, any single one of you, come on my show and host it. Nobody else offers you that. Who else is going to do that? Nobody. Because again, that's me being my unique spin of what I am and how I am as a creative, because I feel everybody has the opportunity to use a voice. And I want to put that out there. And I do that all the time. I have no problem, no shame in it putting somebody else in charge of what I've created, because again, I love to share the creative process of just what we do. I mean, I'm like, I just can't fit in. I'm sorry. I'm the square peg and you can't fit me in the round hole, buddy. I'm sorry.
And that's being authentic to yourself. All the time when we're growing up, don't you ever feel that feeling like I'm different, I don't fit in, yet you're ashamed to tell anybody because you're going to be called crazy, or you're going to have to go to the doctors, or something's wrong with you. And we hide that, we sit on it. Like we're born pure, we get this imagination and creativity, and then we're told to put it in a box and don't deal with it. Like that is just snuffing the candle. You can't do that. And then later on, we're being encouraged now to go there and light that candle and let it shine. That's who we are. And then you see all these people telling us what a leader is. Well, if you can't lead yourself first, you have no right leading anybody else. You owe it to you to be the best you can be. You have value. You get to see it. Leaders help you find that gift in you, because I believe we're all born with that special, unique gift. And that's what we do half our lives, is go around looking for that gift. It doesn't matter when it happens, but it will. If you're lucky, you'll find people that you can gravitate to, that surround you, and they're happy when it's loaded onto the planet. Otherwise, you're not in the right crowd. And some people don't get to ever find their gifts. Other people have a gift of maybe they said something to somebody else on the planet that changed their lives. They don't know they've done it, but they've done it. But the best gift of all is knowing when somebody tells you that you did something to change them for the better, to make it better for them. It's our number one job when we're born, to help one another. And I don't know why this isn't emphasized, or when you figure it out, how come we're not throwing it into the schools? You know, like, it's education. You go to a school, it's math, English, it's just subjects. Why aren't we learning about life in school? Why aren't we being told we have value? What do you got to give to this planet? You got something in you. Let's find it. The leaders should have been there from day one when you're in kindergarten. And if you don't get it at home, get it from the education system, change it. It's changing because of COVID. We have to be 6 feet apart. Let's go 6 feet inside ourselves and find something to pull out and hand into the world. That's the way it should be. Sorry, I just went off there.
No, but it was a good.
Yeah,
it
you
was
and Dimitri-
good.
That
It was good, Paula. It was good. Well, we're at about an hour and a half in, so I think we're gonna call it a night for
Yes.
this call
Yeah,
for this week.
Dimitri's
But we will
good
have
as
an
gold.
opportunity to possibly even consider that as a topic for next week, because we will be meeting again next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
I'm in on that one.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
I love these Nateland. I get off my show and I get to hop right into these things.
Yeah.
I get
So
hyped.
we're just so delighted that you got, and honored, honestly,
Yes.
that each of you are taking time out of your busy schedules, although it's at night for us here in the States. And Dimitri, I consider you part of the States at the moment, even if you're not here over here. You're in the same kind of time zone, and that you're taking time out, and especially because you've been not so well this week. Thank you so much for coming tonight and getting our calls started off on the right note.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for having us. This is
you.
remarkable. I always feel good after this, so that's a great thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Tingly. Feel good.
Yeah, I'm going to bed happy.
Exactly.
Well, good.
That's
We
right.
look forward to seeing you next week then.
Yes.
Have a good night. Feel better, Dimitri.
Yes,
Good night,
Dimitri.
everybody.
All right, guys.
Night.
Y'all be
Bye.
safe.